What's down, fam? It's your boy Slim Soul.
Oh, y'all, and you also know it's still who that.
Hello, this your boy Carlos Clayton. I'm the host of Uneducated Sports Talk. Subscribe to the big homie Hoodie Jew for every.
Hey, this your boy, Dope 17, the host of the. Just want to remind y'all, go ahead and subscribe to my homie Hoodie Jew's channel. And like always, love.
What's good, guys? My name is Zach.
And I'm Nonfiction, and we are Real Fan Sports.
And you need to stop what you're doing right now. Hit that subscribe button and subscribe to your boy, Hoodie Juby.
Hoodie Juby.
What's good, Who Dat Nation podcast, and you can tell by the thumbnail we have two special guests. So come on, man, let's talk some Saints football.
Yeah, we in the zone, watch the Saints rise. Kellen Moore's game tall, never gonna give up. Saints on a mission, watch them take flight. Lights, it's a beautiful night. Championship dreams, we're ready to score. With Hoodie Jube and the crew, we're wanting more. So here's to the Saints, let the victory blow. Back coast, we pop with the Sandy and
What's good, Who Dat Nation, man? It's your boy Hoodie Juby, and come on, man, y'all know the saying, there ain't no YouTube without your boy Hoodie Jube, y'all. I hope everybody's having a great Friday night, man, but tonight's gonna be special because we got two great reporters out here going to be talking on this. You already know one of them, so let me bring him on. I already tell him all the time, he's my co-host now, and he don't want to say, oh, you started the channel yourself. I don't care. You're my co-host, man, because you're the guy, Logan. Come on, man. They might know you by what? The Soul Man, or you might just know him because he is just a Louisiana reporter all around Louisiana sports, man. Come on, my guy, Logan. What up, man?
What's going on, Hoodie? Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir, man. I gotta invite you, man, on. And like I told you, you're always gonna be co-host from now on. You already know that. I don't give a damn if you didn't start it or not. You're here to the end. So shout out to you, man. And hey, we got a special guest tonight. Everybody knows. And everybody, do y'all have y'all sunglasses? Cause y'all about to be blind, man. Because why? He has one of the sexiest bald heads you will ever see. It's so bald, man. Inside it goes across me. But also, y'all, he is the best to me, okay? He might say, oh, not the best. No, you are the best Saints reporter out there. And he is the host of the Locked On Saints. My God, Ross Jackson.
Let me get the last second shine on. Hold on, wait, don't bring me up yet, Hoodie. Hold on, wait.
Oh.
Hey, I got you, boy. Hey, glad to be here with you, man. Thanks for having me. Good to see y'all.
Yes, sir. It's good to see you, man. And it's been a minute. It's been a while, but you know, I know you, man. You just been busy with Locked On Saints. You know, training camp. You've been busy with everything. So we do appreciate you, making some time, and coming on, this podcast with us. But me and Logan, man's got a lot of questions for you because you've been at camp. We haven't been able to get to camp yet, so we definitely need some insight from you, going to camp. So just asking you so far. This is the first question. Quarterback battle so far. It just seems like with the posts, from all the reporters, all the people from the media, it seems like Spencer Rattler's got the edge right now. It seems like he's been the best QB1 so far in camp. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's certainly what I've seen. That's certainly what a lot of folks that have been around Airline Drive have seen. This guy is very much kind of taking the reins of that QB1 spot so far. Now, of course, we're 8 practices in, or rather 8 days of training camp in, 7 practices in. They had that walkthrough day last Tuesday as well. And so, there's still a lot of things that can change from here forward. But, one of the things that I consistently talked about was I wasn't sure if this quarterback competition was going to be the most fair quarterback competition, right? Like you overly invest, or not overly invested, but you've invested in a high draft pick. You've invested in a guy that's got a lot of really good tools in Tyler Shuck, but was he going to be NFL ready right away? It was going to be the big question mark. And so I was curious about how much kind of things would lean themselves over towards Tyler Shuck when it came to making those decisions, regardless of how Spencer Rattler looked. But to me, Spencer Rattler has looked so good, and Tyler Shuck has looked like a guy that still needs more time to this point, enough that it feels like Spencer Rattler is clearly kind of in the lead when it comes to what we're looking at as kind of the hierarchy of, or the sort of totem pole of this quarterback battle so far. So for me, it's pretty easy that this is kind of all Spencer Rattler all the time for right now. And then right now you're just watching Tyler Shuck kind of get the opportunity to kind of get his feet under him, kind of figure out what's happening at the NFL speed, at the NFL level, all those other things. But for right now, this feels like this is Spencer Rattler's job to lose at this point, and that should be a positive thing. This is a guy with 6 NFL starts. He had his opportunities last season, spent a lot of his time over the offseason between years 1 and year 2 to kind of, get things refined and continue to build up. And so he told me last year after his first 3 starts that once he gets his opportunity going into 2025, if he got that opportunity, he would be an entirely new quarterback. And we're seeing signs of that already here throughout training camp.
Nice. And, I already asked you this earlier, during the week, but is it curious on why Spencer Rattler hasn't taken reps yet with the third team and why he's just doing first and second?
Yeah, I mean, I think that tells you where the Saints see him, right? I think that tells you exactly what it is that, there's going to be times to where, you'll stand at a podium and you'll say something, but then the actions are really the thing that you're trying to watch out for, right? And so the actions are showing you that Spencer Rattler has been a guy that has been so good. And now, of course, I'm going to say this, and then immediately we're going to go to practices this weekend, and he's going to get third team snaps. But even then, even in that case, right? Even in that case, it would have taken 9 or 10 days for him to see his first ever third team rep. So I think it just gives you an idea of where it is the team sees him. You see how the players respond to him on the field, all that other stuff too. And so he's coming off of first team reps on Thursday when they were doing kind of end of game 2-minute drills. We'll see how things go going into the weekend. But even if he got third team reps over this point, the fact that it's taken this long for him to get to that point certainly tells you a little bit about where it is that the Saints see him.
Nice. So Logan, what you got?
So we're in a new regime, as you know, Ross. I mean, Kellen Moore, it's the Kellen Moore era. So what have you seen from Coach Moore so far at practice that has been different from the previous regime, from the Dennis Allen era? I mean, it seems like it's been night and day.
Yeah, no, it has been. It really has been. I'll go back to a very simple observation as my my colleague Doug Mouton, sports director over at WWL TV, made. Kellen smiles a lot, man. Like he just looks like a dude that enjoys the fact that he's out there being a head coach. He just loves football. And you remember, I'm sure, that was one of the big things about him when he was kind of in the candidacy before getting the job, was that everybody talked about how smart he was and how much he loves football. And so those were kind of the 2 biggest things that you constantly heard about him. And I think that we've seen both of those things here so far in the early goings of him becoming the New Orleans Saints head coach. I think the other thing is that he's just kind of opened the door for, and this is going to sound really rudimentary, guys, and I understand that, but it does mean something. He gives these football players an opportunity to just go out there and play football. I mean, Logan, you've played, like, you know how it goes, man. Like, there's a big difference between when the guy that's not on the field tells you how you're supposed to be doing things and the guy that's not on the field trusts you to go out there and do the things that you need to do as the guy on the field, right? Like, that's a very, very different approach. And I think that we're seeing Kellen Moore take a little bit more of the latter, and we're seeing it with Brandon Staley. We're seeing it with Phil Galliano on the special team side. We're seeing it with Doug Nussmeier, who's helping to support on the offensive side as the offensive coordinator. I think that that's a big part of why it is that you're seeing all these players buy in. They have a head coach that really, really loves the game, and they have a head coach that lets them play it and allows them to be able to come off the field and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And I think that having that level of input and that level of trust in that player population, that player personnel, goes a really, really long way.
You have 3 former quarterbacks on your coaching staff right now. You have Kellen Moore, who had over 50 wins in college. You had Doug Nussmeier, who actually played for the Saints in the 90s under Ditka. And you have Scott Tolzien, who was just in the league for a cup of coffee for a while. Do you think that's going to help with the development of Tyler Shuck in a way, and even Spencer Rattler in this competition as the season goes on?
Yeah, I'll add Scott Linehan in there too, who they also have on staff.
They picked him up,
no, it's okay. That's all right. Like all those guys, I think that's the hope, is the way that I would say it, Logan. Like that's the goal, And I think when you look at it, like the fact that they have gone this far into camp, shuffling 3 quarterbacks, right? Because it's not just Spencer Rattler, it's not just Tyler Shuck. They've got Jake Haener very much involved. He's getting first team reps, he's getting opportunities, all that other stuff. When you're doing that, adding a veteran quarterback is going to cut into one of those guys' reps at some point throughout camp, right? I mean, we just saw Hunter Deckers get let go. He didn't see a single snap during training camp. He saw opportunities during like mini camps, things like that. But even during OTAs, I think it was like 2 reps, maybe 4 reps. And so I think that if you had that veteran quarterback in the building, right, a Ben DiNucci, right, going back to who was on the roster earlier in the season, go back to last year when they had 4 quarterbacks on the roster, they had Nathan Peterman all the way up to like August 2nd for some reason. And so I think that you look at all that, and what that presents is an opportunity for that veteran quarterback to kind of no fault in their own, stifle the development of a young quarterback, because some snaps are going to end up going that way. And so I think that the Saints have kind of mitigated a little bit of that concern by making sure that they have all of these, former quarterbacks that are on the roster. That helps these guys develop a bit. I mean, we got to remember, Kellen Moore is 36 years old, and he's going into, so he hasn't been out of the league for that long. And I think that a lot of the reasons why players are buying into him is because of the focus on like player health, right? Player experience, all those other things. That comes from a guy being a former player himself very recently. And I would say Scott Tolzien probably contributes to that as well, as being the most recent on an NFL roster. You think about Ted Rath and what he's done as well as those other guys. I think there's a lot of places where you can see sort of the former quarterback experience of this coaching staff benefiting the quarterbacks, but also to certain extents, I won't say all, but to certain extents benefiting the entire roster.
You can go again.
Before I turn it over to Hood, I mean, we have Brandon Staley now as the new defensive coordinator. This is probably the first time we've seen a 3-4 defense since Rob Ryan was here years ago. So how true of a 3-4 is this defense? Is it like, is that the base scheme, or we're going to see a lot more 4-man fronts, 4-2-5? So, like, what is the scheme that Brandon Staley's going to be running?
Yeah, I think I would call it multiple, just like any other 3-4 defense is multiple. I think you'll see times to where, when they shift to a nickel package, you'll still see 2 interior defensive linemen, and 2 stand-up, 2 edge rushers on the outside, but you'll see them standing up wide 9 out there, 7 tech to wide 9, as opposed to being guys that are kind of in that 5-eye sort of, inside the tackle shoulder run stoppers like you've seen in the Dennis Allen scheme in the past. And so I think you'll see a lot of those kind of 3-man fronts with the or we'll call them odd fronts, where you have the 3 on the interior and the 2 stand-ups. But there are going to be times where they want to get 5-6 defensive linemen out on the field, but don't want to sacrifice a linebacker in the process. And in that case, you can swap one of those defensive linemen out and then be able to create a little bit more of that 4-2-5, 4-1-6, and kind of see what you might be able to do there. Saints are also doing some interesting things in terms of creating kind of these 5-1. They're called penny fronts. And Eric McCoy talked about that a little bit, about how much that stresses him out. And so what you'll see is like 5 on the defensive line, 1 linebacker, and then it opens you up for the chance to have 5 defensive backs out there. So it's a different look of like a pressure nickel set in a way that I think is going to be really interesting. So I think you're going to see a lot of creative stuff from Brandon Staley. And a lot of that comes with the ability to be able to mix and match this personnel a little bit. So I would call it multiple, but I think at its core, it'll still be a 3-4 defense. But every 3-4 defense around the NFL still goes 4-2-5 a lot of times, because that's what you live and die in the league for sure.
Wanted to ask you this. Speaking of the defensive side, how is it looking in camp for Alontae Taylor? Is he going to be back in the nickel? They're going to play him both, outside and nickel? Like, what's their idea with Alontae this year?
Yeah, I think you'll see him outside on base sets, and then, which would mean like 4 defensive backs. And then when they go to the 5 defensive back kind of nickel sets, dime sets, 6 defensive backs, all that, you'll see him move into the slot. How camp is looking for him so far, he's frustrated because the quarterbacks don't test him very much. There's a mic'd up video of him not too long ago to where he was coming off the field and he was like, no action. I ain't getting no action. And honestly, like, that's a good thing, right? That means that the quarterbacks are looking his way. They see number 1, they see him in good coverage, and then they move on in the progression. these guys are being coached to read through their progression unless their first read is going to be open or is open. And so because of that, I think that what you can take away from that is that Alontae Taylor's been pretty solid in coverage in those opportunities and things like that. But he just wants more action. He wants the opportunity to kind of see the ball come his way and see what he can do about it. He'll get a lot of action in the slot, in the run game too, and everything like that. And so he'll see a lot of all that. But I think that what we're seeing from him right now is a real opportunity to be able to really kind of get back in his bag like he was early on in that 2024 season and be able to be a guy that's a pass rusher, be a guy that's a run stopper, be a guy that's a coverage player, all that, and be able to be utilized in a lot of different ways and then move inside and out. So I think you'll see a very versatile game from Alontae Taylor. Does it mean that he's going to end up being a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro? I can't go that far because that doesn't often happen for those slot and nickel guys. But are you going to see him, have play calls come his way that put him in position to do what it is that he does well? Going back to, Hoodie, your intro video has him, sacking Bryce Young one of 3 times that he got in the backfield last year. Like, you'll see more of him getting opportunities to do that in Brandon Staley's defense, and then he's got to go out there and make the play, of course.
Totally. And the other question would be, since we're talking about like corners, what you think about rookie Quincy Riley so far? It looks like he's a ball hawk out there.
Ball hawk is exactly the word that I would give him. 15 interceptions over the course of his time, both at Middle Tennessee and at Louisville. He had the most interceptions of any corner going into the 2025 draft class. He had 54 passes defended, as well. This is a guy that just makes plays on the football. And sometimes that means that you take a risk and that risk doesn't pay off. Sometimes you take a risk, it does pay off. But I think that's something you're willing to deal with and that you're okay with, because this Saints defense had 3 takeaways over the course of the last 8 or 9 games of the season last year post Dennis Allen, right? Going to after that Carolina Panthers game after he was fired. And so you want to see that your offense. That's kind of what Quincy Riley does really well. He's played sort of the zone match and vision match completely, foreign to him. It should be pretty familiar to him, kind of like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who played those same kind of concepts during his time over at Alabama. Tyrann Mathieu has a big impact on sort of placing a premium on NFL veteran experience. And so guys like Julian Blackmon, who just signed, getting up into first team reps, it's not a coincidence, right? He's earned experience. And so you might lean on that experience, have the conversation between Quincy Riley and Isaac Yiadom, both of those their levels, but the NFL experience might end up making it. He does a really, really good job of making plays on the football, receivers sometimes and things like that. Like, he does a lot of things really well. So I think he'll eventually find his way into being a pretty good contribution type of player. It just might not be week 1 because you might want to lean on the veteran experience that you have alternatively.
Oh, for sure. And then one last question, then I'll let it go back to Logan and ask some more questions. Are you seeing a different Chase Young?
I think seeing a consistency from Chase Young, because Chase was such a standout in last year's camp too. I think that the difference is really being seen by his teammates. Like, he's a disruptive player on the field. He was a disruptive player on the field last year during training camp and everything like that too. He was a disruptive player on the field last year during the regular season. It was 73 pressures, the most in his career. He was top 6 in the NFL, opposite Carl Granderson, who was top 20 in the NFL in pressure numbers. The big conversation around Chase Young, of course, is and was and might continue to be, can you finish at the quarterback? Only 5.5 sacks, right? So in order for him to really look different, we have to see him out on the field during the regular season and see him corral those sacks, finish those plays at the quarterback. I'll be able to see on the field because of what he's doing off the field. And you go to Carl Granderson, you go to Justin Reed, you go to some of these other guys, Pete Werner, who has known him obviously for some time, is vital and important in this defense as a tone setter at that edge. Now, the big thing is he going to be able to finish those plays? So if he can do that, then I think we can say, yeah, that's a different Chase Young. It's as disruptive a Chase Young as we've always seen, but I think the mentality is very different.
Touch on the offense for just a brief moment. In the tight end room, it seems like a lot of people are very worried about it. We've seen them bring
PUP or whatever is going to happen for Taysom Hill. We'll see what happens there. I actually am a little bit higher on the tight end room than I think that most are, because I'm seeing how Juwan Johnson's being utilized in Kellen Moore's scheme versus how Juwan Johnson was utilized in tight end, which is pretty limited. And then of the of the Sean Payton system, which wasn't really the Sean Payton system. It was Pete Carmichael's version of it. And then that Clint Kubiak system, to where we see a lot to where, like, early on in the season, he's having to be basically another offensive lineman more times than not. And then towards the middle of the season, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, this dude can catch. And then all of a sudden he's like super involved in the passing game. And so I think that getting him involved much earlier, like this receiving yards last year, you know what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong. Rashid Shaheed had half a season. Chris Olave only had half the season. He only had 400 receiving yards last, played a role in it. But you could see towards the catching options that they lost were no longer an option. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, right, Juwan's got hands. He can do that. And then all of a sudden he became a part of the game plan. And that's happened over the course of the past 3 seasons. You look at the last 8 games versus the first 9 games or first 8 games, and all of it, you can see like the tale of 2 halves of the season for Juwan. And so I am higher on him than I think that most are. I think that people thought that his contract was, overpaid, where really he's paid like, really kind of okay tight ends. He's not paid like a top tight end in the league. And now all of a sudden he gets put into this position to where he gets to be kind of this, focal point as a pass catcher in this Kellen Moore system, which is utilizing him laterally and horizontally across the field, letting him utilize his speed, letting him utilize his size, getting him, mismatch on guys that are smaller than him, that are slower than him, all those other things. I think that that's going to help a lot. And then, you get once you finally get a healthy Foster Moreau back, like he was outstanding last year, man. Like he had a really, really solid season last year beyond just the passing game, but his contributions to the run game, his contributions in leadership, all of that. Then you add in Jack Stahl, who's island SOB that just loves playing football and loves does, and he can contribute in the passing game too. I think they're going to have a pretty solid tight end room for what they're going to have across the entire roster, right? Relative to what they have in the entire roster, we're probably not talking about a top 10. A lot of people seem to think the Saints are. I think they're somewhere in the middle there, and there's growth and improvement to be a playoff team in 2025. And a lot of people are willing to give them credit for. And I think Juwan's like a shining. You can have talent on your roster, you can do that. Then I think Juwan's a guy that you'll see take a little bit of a step forward in 2025 from what we've seen over the course of the past few years, assuming he's able to stay healthy.
So there seems to be a battle in the running back room outside of Kamara, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who's going to be running back number 2 or even running back 3. They join like a Kendre Miller who has been on the injured reserve more than he's been on the field. And then you have Fulmer. Kind of talk about how the running back room, in your opinion, you think is going to shape out to be.
Yeah, I think this is the TBD position right now. Padded practices so far, but 2 of those padded practices have been specifically focused into the half. And those 2-minute drives, ain't a lot of running opportunities to be had in those situations. And so that very much gears itself towards the passing game. So I think that there's still a lot to be learned about the run game here. So I'm going to say it's TBD right now on the running back room. But I've been impressed with Kendre Miller. I've been impressed with Velus Jones Jr. Devin Neal has had some standout moments. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has had some standout moments. And so what I will say is that once they kind of get to really leaning in a little bit more to that run game install, especially in pads, and giving those guys more opportunities to where they're utilizing them in more like game-like call-it situations, which have mostly been focused right now on the passing game as opposed to the run game, that there's talent there to have that competition behind Alvin Kamara. But, who is standing out right now, I would still say that the sample size is too limited to really be able to say, hey, there's this player, there's that player. But there's been some good things that each of those guys have shown. So I look forward to them having some more opportunities to be able to go out there and kind of separate themselves from the pack, which, look, might not really happen until those preseason snaps get there. And some of it, too, might just be a test of, hey, how durable are you, right? And I think that that's going to be the conversation for Kendre Miller, who really, for the first time since he comes into the NFL, really kind of feels like himself. I mean, this is a dude, like, if I could just wax philosophical on Kendre Miller for a little while, like, this dude got drafted at 20 years old, came in with a meniscus injury, and then had all these weird injuries that he's never had over the course of his collegiate career and throughout his playing career, like his life. He had a day where he had to get pulled out of practice because he had like a jaw lockup, like TMJ. Like, this dude has had just like concussion, all that other stuff has been the most prevalent, obviously. And so this is a dude at 22 years old built and said, okay, I can still play round, to be 2 years into the league, I can still do this. Like, that's not the situation you expect a guy like that to be in. And so him to be able to climb back from that and kind of, a place where he can hold on to and keep that in mind. He changed everything. He changed his number. He didn't want to be in 25 anymore because all of a sudden, give me something different. Just give me something different. And so, mentality, like, go back and watch his media availability from earlier on to like his introductory press conference. Keep it that way. And True Miller has never been about health. And so if he can check those other two boxes, it finally could give him an opportunity.
But this year they first round, and then they move Trevor Pinch, and has the transition for Trevor.
5 and other guys to the ground. They're talking about in the film things, but he has taken on kind of the role of a physical, aggressive tone setter, and I think that plays super. That we had those conversations, all that kind of stuff. We all had it in different ways. We spoke to him, whatever. But like the consensus very much was the Saints aren't going to move in the guard. Saints aren't going to move in the guard. And then all of a sudden, like this new coaching staff comes in. And then it became like, yeah, we'll evaluate. We'll see. And then things continue to move on. And then Kelvin Banks gets drafted, all this stuff. And then that conversation went, yeah, we're kind of curious about what he might look like at guard. And then that's when you heard all of us before, mini camps and everything like that saying, hey, they're probably going to move from the guard. Because that was a big shift to go organizationally from, no, we're not going to do that, to, yeah, we might see. You know what I'm saying? Like, when all of a sudden the answer becomes less certain, it's like, okay, well, maybe they're actually going to be considering this. And so I think that's a spot where you'll continue to see him develop. Again, the big benefit for him is going to be in the run game because of his physical nature, his aggressiveness, all those other things. And in padded practices, we've seen a very strong tilt. See more of the run game get implemented, installed, all of that. I think he'll stand out a little bit more, but I think he has the opportunity to be a tone setter. I think the big thing is going to be his work has to be very different, as you're familiar with, like footwork at the tackles on hand level and all entire career playing versus a position last year that he played before. And 2024, 2023. And so I think that's what you're going to be seeing from him. So we'll see how things continue there. Still a ways to move over to right tackle, his natural position, and so I think those guys get really settled in, about comfortable. Kelvin Banks is athletic. He was the Lombardi Award winner. He was a consensus All-American. All that. I think Mel Kiper confused him with Connor Williams. Also stuff. He's a durable dude, and everything, and so he was excellent during his time over at Texas, and Guy and the Saints got him. And so I think we'll see more of that, and we'll get a better kind of idea of where he is when he starts going up against guys that aren't wearing the same, colors as him, you know what I'm saying? And he is on a different team, and he can be a little bit more physical. He can be a little bit more dominant, all that. But I think that he is the line. If those guys pan out, the entire team probably going to be the last guys are kind of the linchpin of the success of this offensive line.
Ready?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off the offensive line, I mean, it just seems like this year, after seeing how bad it went last year, losing Erin McCoy on there, and then everybody's just, getting injured, it just seems like this year they went out and said, okay, if you want to win, you got to win in the trenches, so let's get some more veteran guys. So we went back and we got Will Clapp to help out, who can do center or guard for you. You went and got the dude from the Titans. It just seems like they keep getting more and more depth, and it's not just like random depth. These are big names, people that started in the NFL for a while.
Yep.
And stuff like that. So it's really good to see people like that, and to see them add in depth. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you, and I just was curious if you've seen this on Twitter, what do you think about the receiving room right now, where people, Mr. T.J. Jones might have pissed somebody off? Olave's brother saying, I think they're focusing on the wrong guy to be the number one receiver. I mean, what's your thought about that, and do you see Rashid Shaheed having a breakout year under Kellen Moore?
I've been pretty consistent for a long time that I don't believe in wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. That's not a part of how I view offenses in the NFL. And that part of that is the Sean Payton, blame Sean Payton. Like Sean Payton did that to me. Sean always had his X, he always had his Z, he always had his F, he always had his guys that can move around, that can play multiple spots and stuff like that. Like that's the way that I look at the NFL game. I don't really look at wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, because Sean Payton's offense taught me that wide receiver 1 changes depending upon what the opposing defense struggles to stop. Does the opposing defense struggle against the big physical guy? Okay, well then Michael Thomas is wide receiver 1. He's the first option for that game. But then if they struggle against the speedy, shifty guys, then all of a sudden Brandon Cooks was number one in that offense for that week. Do they struggle with receivers out of the backfield? Great. Then all of a sudden, Alvin Kamara is wide receiver one for that offense for that week. You feel what I'm saying? And so, like, to me, like, that's the thing. And so I think that really the big thing when you look at this wide receiver core is how many options can you find and can you develop, and that can come in and play multiple positions, that can move around the line, because then that's going to optimize the opportunity for Kellen Moore to be able to create mismatches with his offense. And so when you have a guy like Chris Olave that can play in the slot and play outside, a guy like Brandon Cooks who can play in the slot and play outside, Mason Tipton, same thing, Rashid Shaheed, same thing, Cedric Wilson Jr., same thing. Can you get those guys in that position to where they're able to kind of move about and be able to take advantage of the mismatches that you can create up against smaller defensive backs, slower defensive backs that struggle with footwork, defensive backs that struggle with double moves, defensive backs that are too aggressive, defensive backs that aren't aggressive enough. Don't play to what your wide receivers can do. Obviously, you only want to ask them to do what it is they can do, but play towards what it is that you can attack in the opposing defense. Attack the other side of the ball. Don't just focus on, well, we're going to do what it is that we do, and they're going to do what it is that they do, and we're going to do what it is that we do better than they do what they do. No, go out there and find a way to create those mismatches and attack what it is that opposing offense or opposing defense struggles in. And I think that that's where this wide receiver room could potentially provide that. I think you'd love to have a bigger body. I think you'd love to have a more physical possession receiver that can help you, particularly with young quarterbacks, that can help you out in the short and intermediate areas, close to the line of scrimmage, all those other things. I think you'd love to see this team get a little bit better with yards after catch. They used to be a top NFL team when it came to that metric. Now they're at best in the middle. And so can you create those opportunities? Some of that comes down to scheme, all of that. But I think that that's kind of where this team is. Remember, Sean Payton used to come in here and win games with undrafted wide receivers, right? And guys that he just schemed into positions. Kellen Moore has a similar mind in terms of he can get you open with his scheme, utilizing your talents. Not necessarily does he need somebody to be, this kind of receiver or that kind of receiver or this number one or that number two or whatever. And so I'm not saying I disagree with anybody's take or anything like that. I'm not about that. But for me, like, the big thing is, I think that the option of what's number one, what's number two, who's number three, all that's just going to change week to week. And so find the guys that can be most duplicitous, find the guys that can be most multiple, so that you can move them around in your offense and take advantage of where it is that defense on the opposite side might struggle on a week to week basis.
And I guess one of the other things I wanted to ask you too, I mean, it's kind of like, because it's kind of coming off of the camp from last year. Mm-hmm. Is just the year that we see Mason Tipton carry training camp over to the regular season, or is he just training camp king and just that's it?
Listen, man, my guy Lance Moore, who does our Saint Squad show with us, like, this was Lance, right? Lance was a dude that, like, showed up and he was a camp star, and then he had no OK season, and then he showed up and he was a camp star and he had no OK season, and then he took off. You know what I mean? And so I think that what you see sometimes when it comes to these, like, training camp studs and all that, is that they show up for a year and then they flare out, but very rarely do they come back and do it again. And I think that that's maybe where Mason Tipton might be a little bit different. Like, at one point, something is happening. At one point, something is a coincidence. At another point, something is a habit. And I think that if that habit is there for Mason Tipton, then that probably means something. And I think that what is the biggest thing is going to be, can he carry it over to the regular season? And I think that him doing this again for a second year quarterbacks and everything, he's got 3 receiving touchdowns, I think, in team drills so far. He leads the team by my count. These are just my numbers. But he leads the team, I think, along with Rashid Shaheed, for 3 receiving touchdowns. And he's got a touchdown from Spencer Rattler. He's got a touchdown from Tyler Shuck, and he's got a touchdown from Jake Hayner. And so he is, and they're not all just down the field or anything like that. He's also got nice catches. He's got a great, like, phenomenal timing with Spencer Rattler, very comfortable there. He's made some physical catches over the middle of the field, all those other things. And so I don't want to come out here and say, to be overly cautious about him and diminish the work that he has done and the production that he hype this guy up. He's going to be the next, this, that, and the other. But I think he's coming out here and he's showing this for a second year. If he can stay healthy, he could be a guy that could translate a little bit more of that into the 2025 season, especially again considering Kennedy of this team, and then that'll open up some opportunities when you have who's super fast, who's a solid route runner. He's going to find holes in defenses and things like that. He's going to be able to take advantage of play actions and what that might do in terms of the eye discipline of how you, when you look at a guy like Mason Tipton, a guy like Rashid Shaheed, what they offer you is, and I think that that's where Mason Tipton could potentially separate himself a little bit in terms of being a guy that's smart enough, that's fast enough, and that's skilled enough to be able to help you take advantage of those things. And then it's up to the coaching staff and the scheme to be able to put him in those positions.
And speaking of wide receiver room, I haven't been hearing too much of Bud Means, a big body receiver guy. So, do you think his job is on the line right now with all these other people in the on the roster? Or
hard to say because I mean he didn't really get an opportunity to establish a job either during his rookie season because unfortunately he dealt with that ankle injury and then the setback, everything like that, and that was really hard on him. That was really tough on him last year, and so he really kind of put his nose to the grindstone this offseason. Worked really hard and all that, and he looked great during OTAs and minicamp, but he's been mostly quiet during training camp. And so there's still a lot of time left in training camp. We're only 8 days of practice in, 8 days of camp in, and so he's got a real opportunity. His first catch was a touchdown. I'll give him that and everything. And this is a dude that has just one of the brightest personalities that you're going to find in the locker room, a guy that never gives up, that never counts himself out, all that. So I think that he's a player that still has some opportunity ahead of him. But right now, I'd put him kind of behind guys like, I mean, obviously the top 3 in Olave, Cooks, and Shaheed, but I kind of put him behind Tipton right now. And I think that there's kind of an amalgamation of the other guys, Donovan Peoples-Jones and Chris Tyree, Moochie Dixon, Cedric Wilson Jr., and Bub Means, and these other guys that are still trying to maybe put their stamp on how they might be able to contribute. I don't think he's quite shown that yet. And so he's got more opportunities, though, coming up throughout training camp in the preseason.
Gotcha. And I just had 2 more people I was just curious about from camp, and they both rookies. Number one, what do you think about Jonas Sanker? Do you think he's going to have an opportunity to maybe have a starting position, maybe be put in the slide like they do and just blitzing because he's a certified tap run? So maybe you can see him blitzing off the edge a little bit more, or special teams and make his way up to the starting.
Premium on NFL talent right now in that defensive secondary in particular, and so he's not gonna leap Alonzo. Probably not gonna leap guys like Jordan at safety. And so it'll probably start for him on special teams, and then things will kind of settle in for him in terms of there. The good news for Jonas is that 100 snaps during his collegiate time at box safety and as a slot guy. And so you can really put him anywhere. We've seen him, it was during open practices. So we saw him, back up in the slot as the second, slot guy. And with the second team, we've seen him crash down in the box and things like that. And so he has this really phenomenal, versatility to him that I think is really valuable. You just got to figure out where he's going to be able to kind of utilize that versatility, maybe even focus that versatility a little bit, settle in a role, and then kind of earn that role. But it's going to be a little bit challenging for him to start, and that's okay. That's fine. Like, he's just going to be behind guys right now if he doesn't come out here and shock everybody and perform extremely well, which I do think he has the capability of doing. I don't want to discount that at all. But as of right now, he's got some veteran guys that are going to be ahead of him. But him as a solid, slot backup, which the Saints haven't really had in a while. Like they've had Ugo Amadi over the course of the past couple of years, but he's kind of struggled when he's been put in those situations, everything. But he's got veteran experience there. But a guy like Jonas maybe fits there a little bit better. You're still looking at the ability to be able to have a multiple nature at safety and maybe even slot in as a dime back or maybe even the backup dime back behind Jordan Howden if he holds that role, all these other things. Like, I think there's going to be opportunities for Jonas Sanker, but it's going to be a little bit more of like settling in and figuring out where that is as opposed to coming in and stealing it right away.
Okay, and then the last rookie is going to be Logan's favorite player because it was his favorite position. And the question is, will rookie Danny Stutzman, do you think he's going to, be able to start right away?
I don't think he's going to start right away, but he's going to get playing time. This dude is going to – and look, once he gets that playing time, then the conversation starts, how do you keep this guy off the field if he produces the way that he's produced so far during training camp? It's a good problem to have for New Orleans, who – I mean, have a history of being thin at linebacker, right? Like we forget the Paris Harrelson days and the Jamarco Sanford days and all those other things. Like we forget that because of DeMario, right? And so, Kasim Edebali was technically an edge rusher, but like those, it was a different time during that time. Curtis Lofton, you know what I mean? Like these guys that, they didn't have the deepest, linebacker room. Remember they traded to get, Donnell Ellerbe, and it was like, oh, that's going to be the guy that fixes the linebacker room, and it wasn't, it didn't really happen until DeMario. And then you got so used, or we've all gotten so used to DeMario because he never left the field. You know what I mean? And so now going into 2025, you're probably going to see opportunities out there at the linebacker position. And so finally having some depth there with a guy like Danny Stutzman, who consensus All-American, was one of the top-rated off-ball linebackers going into this year's draft. You talk about a certified tackler and Jonas Anker. You got another one in Danny Stutzman, no doubt about that. A guy that can go sideline to sideline. He can cover. There's just a lot of things that he does well. The big thing for me is that once he hits the field and you see 47 out there, assuming he holds on to that number, what do you got to do to keep him out there and everything? And so like that to me is going to be the big thing. He's been exciting to watch, man. His sideline to sideline ability is really great. He runs around with his hair on fire, but he's the one that lit his hair on fire, so he's not surprised by it. He was the first round safety that they drafted years ago. I can't remember. Yeah.
Stephon Anthony.
Yeah, I was thinking Anthony is the first name. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so Danny Stutzman has a little bit more of kind of the wherewithal to go with what it is that he does. So you probably see him early on special teams because he has really good downhill ability, and you like that on this. Probably see him in, kickoff coverage when they're prepared to go up against maybe larger, that like matching that sort of personnel. But man, I think during his rookie.
Oh, you have anything else that you might want to ask before we get out of here?
Just two questions because I know you have to go. First thing, Bo Davis, considered was one of the best defensive line coaches in the country from LSU, which I'm not mad about it because he doesn't go far away from where I'm a fan at. So talk about how much of a presence Bo Davis has been. You're going from Todd Grantham to Bo Davis. It just seems like that has to be night and day too. So kind of talk about what Bo Davis has meant to this team so far.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to the defensive line. The first thing I'll tell you is that they hear him, whether they want to. And I think that means something. Like, over the course of the past few years, there have been a few guys, I mean, really landing dudes. And I don't think you get bigger than Bo Davis. You're right. It's absolutely night and day. I mean, look, Cam Jordan has pulled no punches about Todd Grantham, right? And how much he did not like that relationship and how much that cost the defensive line, the lack of development, the lack of focus on development, all those other pieces. Bo Davis is the exact opposite of that. This dude is a born and bred. He's had to be not just a coach, but a recruiter, right? During his time at in college football. And you see that from a lot of this defensive coaching staff, right? Terry Joseph coming over from college, Peter Sermon coming over from college. You look at Grady Brown, who came over from Pittsburgh, but has a lot of collegiate experience. Bo Davis, like there's a lot of that here. And I think that makes sense, right? You're trying to build relationships. You're trying to build a culture. You're trying to do all those things. And certainly like guys that are recruiters have the ability to do that. So I would say that beyond the play on the field, like that would be the other place where you've certainly seen Bo Davis amongst a lot of these other, new sort of coming from the college ranks coaching staff guys have really kind of made their mark.
Damn.
So the last question I had is there was a lot of people when the schedule came out complaining and moaning to high heaven that the Saints don't have any primetime games or any Thursday night games. First time since the year 2000 when, Jeff Blake and Aaron Brooks was scrambling around for us back there. Ooh. Do you have any quarrels with the Saints having any primetime games at all, or do you think that's just kind of an indictment of what the team has looked like the past few years?
I mean, it tells the truth about what the team looks like, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, I love the way Mickey Loomis puts it. Mickey Loomis always talks about, like, yeah, you can only play the schedule that's given to you. But he also says, you know what? We earned that and everything. And so, like, that's reflective of where this team has been. They haven't made the playoffs in the last 4 years. They haven't been the most exciting team to watch. They've been that really unfortunate blend of poor performing and boring sometimes too, and they've been injury riddled and all this other stuff like that. Yeah, like that's typically not what you put on primetime television. You know what I mean? Like just telling the truth, right? Like, I spent a long time in the entertainment industry before I came over to sports. You don't put the worst stuff on primetime television. You don't put the worst stuff out there for everybody to see. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to call the Saints the worst stuff, but they've been at their worst that we have seen since 2006. I think is very fair to say, right? Worst finishes, playoff list finishes, longest streak without the playoffs, all these other things. And so I think all of that is just telling the truth about where the team is. And what I like about what the team has kind of taken from that is not that they feel slighted or that they feel that they were done wrong or done dirty or anything like that. Like, it feels like, yeah, like that's kind of the schedule that they earned. And I think that's a good thing because a lot of people for a long time have said, hey, the Saints need to get out of this win now mode. They need to kind of realize where they are in the NFL life cycle and all those other things. And there's a lot of signals of them doing exactly that. They haven't overspent in free agency as of late. They've been focused on more in-house talent, homegrown guys than anything else. They went in with 9 draft picks and used every single one of them things. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of stuff that I think signals like, yeah, okay, they're aware of where they are at the life cycle. Having, Derek Carr and his surprise retirement, even though I think he would have been gone one way or another, but their surprise retirement there. And then Tyrann Mathieu and his surprise retirement, like that kind of furthers it a little bit more too, right? That's not the team saying, hey, we know where you're at, you got to retire. That's circumstance that the team now has to calibrate and take into consideration about where their life cycle is. And so do I have an issue with it? Do I take issue with it? No. The big thing is that the team doesn't have an issue with it. The team doesn't take issue with it. Instead, they look at it as like, hey, we earned this. If we don't want that to be the case, we got to go and do something about it. And I think that that's a good attitude to have moving in, because right now it's less about expectation, more about ambition for this team. And so if they have the ambition to go out there and prove something wrong, then there's an opportunity to do that. If they can't do that, they reload, they do it again next year. Like that's kind of the part of the life cycle that they're in. And it's kind of nice to see them embrace that, as opposed to like, oh, can we scrounge up another $150 million to pay a quarterback somewhere? You know what I mean? And so it's good to kind of see them in that space.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's the number one thing about all of us as a fan right now. It's just a lot of us, got to set up first about having Tyler Suggs drafted, because, you maybe could have got something better with that second-round pick, but at least it's going to be all young quarterbacks. It's something new to see instead of old veteran quarterbacks that we've been having for years. So it's something, to look at us and be like, okay, we got something we can watch now. We can actually see a young quarterback. Because remember, for years we've been asking to get a new quarterback, a young quarterback, especially, and we finally doing the route, and some people getting upset about it already. And I'm like, damn, did y'all not want to change? And the funny thing is, I like the part where people say rebuild, right? We've been rebuilding quietly. We just haven't, shown it because we went after Derek Carr, we went after certain things. But if you look at it, everybody says, oh, well, because if you listen to all these dumb media people, not you, but, dumb media people who don't know football, they go and say, we're going to go 2-15. This is an Asian roster, and that's all they got to say. But if you really look at it, there's only 2 people that's old. DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan. So where's the Asian?
Yeah, I got that question not too long ago where somebody was kind of asking me about, like, when are they going to finally, like, get rid of these veterans and start figuring out contracts, stuff like that. It's like, where you been? Like,
thank you.
Yeah.
What have you been watching? Like, that's what this whole offseason has been so far, along with even parts of last offseason and everything too. Like, I love the idea that this team is sort of in this space to where it's like, yeah, okay, this is where they're at, and they're operating like that's where they're at. You know what I mean? They're not operating like they're a top 3 team. They're not operating like they're a shoe-in to be in the NFC Championship. They're not being an they're not going about things irresponsibly. Like, you got guys like Micah Parsons and Terry McLaurin that are requesting trades and trying to get out of where they go. Do they get traded? I don't know. We'll find out. Typically, guys that request trades don't ever get traded. Look at Trey Hendrickson, who went back to Bengals camp. He requested a trade 2 months ago, it feels like, and he went back to Bengals camp without a new contract. And so, like, this is kind of the way that things go. But every now and then, like, you get a Deebo Samuel who requests a trade and gets it, and all these other pieces. So we'll see what happens. But, like, I wouldn't expect the Saints to be in on those guys. Not to say that they won't be. Like, they might shock, they might surprise. But I wouldn't expect them to do that because they're doing things like protecting their draft capital, not overspending money. They're fixing their salary cap situation. They're shedding some of these veteran contracts, or rather the veterans are shedding the contracts for them in a couple of cases, as Derek Carr and Tyrann Mathieu have. And so they look like a team right now that's a little bit more likely to say, hey, we know where we are in the life cycle. My other favorite one is when people say, like, oh, yeah, they're going to go with Spencer Rattler, or they're going to go with Tyler Shuck or whatever, and they're only going to win 4 games and blah, blah, blah. Like that disappoints Saints fans. And my favorite thing about that is that, like, Saints fans kind of know where everything is for this team. Like, Saints fans typically that I talk to are more excited about the fact that they're just doing something different. Like, it's not Derek Carr. It's not Dennis Allen. It's just not them. You know what I mean? And so, like, they're trying something different. They're doing something new as opposed to doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And so this idea that, like, oh, the team might be a 4-win team or 2-15, like you said, Hoodie, or like you referenced somebody else saying, and I don't know that Saints fans would necessarily be completely upset with that either, because it's part of the process, and that the process is actually being embraced for a change. And so, like, that's not the shot that people think it is, I think. And I'll tell you what, too, like, if this team is a 5 or 6 win team, but they're fun, I think a lot of Saints fans will take that. And then how do you build on that next year? And how do you build on that next year? So on and so forth. And so I think the perception of what it is that people outside of the Saints sphere understand of the team, and the perception of what they think people within the Saints sphere understand what the team is a little bit disjointed. But I think that the perception inside of the Saints sphere and Saints fandom and all that is very much, the Who Dat Nation is very much about, hey, it is what it is. At least it's different. At least they're trying something new. You know what I mean? And there's an opportunity to build from here. With the previous regime, it felt like there was nothing to build on. This at least feels like there are building blocks.
Oh, for sure. And just one, but if you did let me
tell you something, Baldy.
I had to do it. I had to use it on you. And that's and it's kind of too, because number one is a football player coming in off a good season with
Look, 7.5 sacks last season, operating as a 3 tech. Now all of a sudden he becomes kind of a 4-5 guy hacking. And let me see if I can explain this well. I tried to explain it on my show that the edge rusher would be or is a split from the offensive line, like from the interior. And so they got to get a little bit further out. And so what that does for a guy like Brian Brzee, who's operating as that 3-4 defensive end, he's having to take the inside shoulder of the guard, which you guard a little bit more as well. And so it allows him to be able to operate, because you have a nose tackle that's beating up the center. You have a edge rusher on your side that's taking up that tackle quite a bit, a guy that was often double teamed and often redirected inside and all that, as opposed to the B gap and all that between guard and tackle. If he game, which has always kind of been not the criticism, but like the growth area, right? The place that needed refinement for him, coming incredible to watch so far. He's massive. Like, you watch him get locked up on one of these guys and he just doesn't go anywhere, And so it's, you give Brian Brzee a guy like that next to him, and then another guy on the other side of that, and then another guy on the outside of that, and a guy on the other side of him. That gives him some more opportunity to be able to maybe operate a little bit more in space when they're in those kind of 5-man, 3-man fronts and things like that. And so I think that's probably where you see Brian Brzee's game be able to take another step forward. It's not just his individual growth, but because of the opportunities that the scheme creates for him to be able to further himself as a run stopper, which then keeps him on the field more, and then allows him then to be able to go out there and make more plays as a pass rusher.
Gotcha. And just the last question between this is the energy. Like, you got a fresh start, a lot of young players, a lot of good players still on your roster. And then you think about it as last year, a lot of these players didn't even want to play last year. You can just tell by the way they were moving. They just didn't care because they didn't want to play for Dennis Allen. People was not into it, and they were already had a slump season. People was getting injured. It just seemed like it just wasn't there. The energy was there. So to lose all the energy and to still just tells me I feel like we can easily be a 5 to 6 win team this year. With them, that is just like playing paintball, going bowling. They just got the energy, and it seems like everybody wants to be there now.
Yeah, things that are present. He's doing. I can't imagine Da doing that. I can't imagine Sean doing that. You know what I mean? And so just these little things that he's doing, like the community project that I covered over in Holly Grove. Where they were rebuilt Trinity Community Center and everything, or the former Trinity Community Center. They were kind of rebuilding that and everything, and then the bowling and paintball, like you mentioned, going to 504 and all this stuff. Like, it's just you can really see the focus on team as opposed to the offensive guy or whatever. You know what I mean? That were on one side of the football and they had a coach necessarily in New Orleans, but just like the owners meeting and stuff like that, like you pick up these stories. That's focus the opposite side of the ball. I spend most of my time with this coordinator or whatever. And Kellen is doing a really good job of making sure that he is everybody's coach, right? Like he's building the team as opposed to just being the offensive guy. And that's important going into his first year because he's got to win a lot of people over and everything like that. And I think he's done that so far successfully. And then I think that the other thing is, like, we did our pre-training camp special WWL for 4th Down on 4, and we were talking about record predictions and things like that. And I picked the Saints to win 6 games this year because they are playing a 4th place, like a last place schedule. So we got to remember that. But also, like, they won 5 games last year in really bad circumstances, to your point, Hoodie. And I feel like just the improvement over Dennis Allen as your head coach, you could probably get another win based on what you had last year. And I think that if they do that, like, yeah, they're probably not picking top 10 in that case. We got to see. I mean, it depends on how the rest of the NFL, goes or falls apart or whatever. But you're probably not picking top 10, but that's fine. Like, that's a good spot to be because you've improved and you've shown some improvement. You have something to build upon and all these other things. And I think that it's good for the Saints, too, that they have some weaker opponents towards the end of the season because then they can build a little momentum going. And you got the Jets, you got the Titans, you finish the division rivals, all this stuff. Like, I just think that, like, that's a good space to be in to where if you can win 3 of those games over the last, 5-6 weeks, let's say, like, that's good momentum to have going into the offseason where you're hoping to continue to build. You got more money to spend. They won't have a ton of money to spend. They could make more money to spend if they want to, but they'll have something to get going there, have something that people can be excited about. Julian Blackmon, and I'll stop on this, but because I'm giving you a very long answer to your question, I'm sorry. But
no, you're good.
Julian Blackmon talked about at the podium, and of course, this is the Colts finished his 4th year there as somebody that played at Utah. He wanted to draft Julian Blackmon in the 3rd round of that 2020 drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, and then Brandon Staley drafted Terrell Burgess, and now here in New Orleans 5 years later, he's got Julian Blackmon and Terrell Burgess both on his roster, right? Yeah. And so like he's wanted to work with one of the things that Terrell Burgess was asked that I think was such a great question was, how much do you pay attention to things like win-loss record, how successful the team was this previous season, all that kind of stuff? And he said, man, you mostly focus reputation. They have not won recently. I want to be a part of kind of the way that he talked about it. And I think people forget how important that is. Option to go to the New York Jets and go back to former teams, whether player or coach-wise, all of this stuff. The Jets made sense because you get the opportunity to try to rebuild the New York Jets. You're not going to get many of those opportunities. And if you go to New Orleans and you fail in New Orleans, you ain't getting a Jets opportunity later, right? And so, like, you go and you take that opportunity. And I think that the same thing happens for a lot of players to where they don't look at necessarily, oh, well, they were 5-12 last year. They're boo-boo. I'm not signing with them. That's not the way these players typically look at it. They typically look at it because we got to remember that these players, these coaches have good, positive egos, right? Self-value. they're going to look at it and say, I could be the difference there, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I never really buy into this player doesn't want to be there, that player doesn't want to be there, and stuff like that. There's certainly instances where that happens. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine a player at 33, 34 years old saying, yeah, I'm going to go down and do training camp in New Orleans. You know what I mean? Like that should sound like hell to them. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers even talked about that. He's like, I ain't doing all that. You know what I mean? And so like, I get it from that point and that perspective. And sometimes you make decisions based on where your taxes are going to be better, where you're, so on and so forth, like, and where you have different coaches and all that, like all that stuff matters. But I think a lot of these players will find the opportunity to say, you know what, this is a chance for me to be able to help to rebuild something. And I think that that's something that this team can start to establish this year to make themselves even more desirable going into that 2026 season, during the 2026 offseason, is if they can show that they're on that pathway of rebuilding that reputation, players are probably going to want to be a part of that. So I'm pretty intrigued to see not just how the 2025 season goes, but how that influences the 2026 season. I look at this like a 34-game season as opposed to a 17-game season, because I think that these next two off seasons are going to be really vital to rebuilding things and getting things going in the vision of what guys like of Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley, Doug Nussmeier, Phil Galliano, what these guys want this team to look like.
Oh, for sure. And then the one thing I would say before we head out of here, a lot of people can say what they want, 2-15. We can predict what we think, 5, 6, 7 wins, should be a fair win for us, with the record we have. But I'm just going to tell everybody out there who's watching this, don't be shocked if the Saints somehow turns it into a 2006 season, because Kellen Moore just giving me a lot of Sean Payton vibes. And guess what you got? You got two young quarterbacks, coming in here, and nobody's believing in you at all. So everybody's going to be looking at you differently, just like, oh, this is going to be an easy game. And guess what happened to the Saints in 2006 and all that? We just started coming back, right? And but the Sean Payton era, this Drew Brees came out of nowhere. I think something could happen like this. I really do. And just think about the Aaron Brooks situation. Remember Aaron Brooks and what was the other quarterback?
Jeff Blake.
Jeff Blake. You remember that nobody believed in that team that year, and they wound up going and beat one of the best teams in the playoffs. So, like I said, so we can all say it could be the worst team. We might be right in the middle, 5, 6, 7 wins. Or you could be shot depending on, because like we want to be there. They want to play. Compared to, I don't like this team. I don't care for the coach. I don't really want to play, dog. Right. So when you got the energy, I just feel like this could be a bigger season than what people are expecting. But
everything's possible, man. Everything's possible.
Yes, sir. And if you don't mind, Ross, just telling everybody now, because you are like one of the best damn Saints reporters out there. They should know you and they should follow you by now. But if they don't, please tell them how they can find you.
Yeah, man, for sure. You can find the Locked On Saints podcast free and available wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube. You can find all the written work over at louisianasports.net. You can find everything else. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can find everything else over on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA, N-O-L-A.
Yes, sir. And then, Logan, what about you? How can they find you?
I'm not hard to find. Like Dion says, you can find me on Twitter or X, as the new people call it, at the Soulman57, or you can find me on Facebook. Just search my name. I'm really very easily accessible.
All right, everybody that's in here, thank y'all for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. Hit the like button on the way out. Go follow Ross Jackson on Locked On Saints if you ain't already, because you should be. And Ross, I'm always gonna say this to you, man. You're still the best Saints report out there. No matter what you say, everybody's gonna probably say Nick Underhill. But guess what? There's one thing about you. No. It's not because of bald. It's not because of bald. It's because you do all this work for the Saints and for your city, and you still find time to make it, for people like me and other people. When on the other hand, I probably had a bunch of messages in Nick Underhill's box for years to come on. He'd never been on my show once. You get what I'm saying?
I'm not talking smack. I'm not doing that.
You're not talking smack to him. This is just me saying, I think
thanks for having me on, man.
Yes, sir. But thank you again. Thanks again, y'all, for coming on. And, Ross, we'll try to get you back on eventually, probably sometime during the season, and just kind of get your thoughts on everything, from there. But thanks again. And everybody, we always say, who what? Who that, baby? We out of here.
We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We going to the bowl. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. We screaming black and gold. Saints going to the Super Bowl, talking black and gold. Young Nolan Hooded Jew wanna beat me like you know. Chris Alive, AMT down the field.